The integrated approach is something that distinguishes the pre-2015 process, in fact, from the post-2015 process. Why is that? It's because for the first time we are bringing together the three dimensions of sustainability: the social agenda, the economic agenda, and the environmental agenda, into a comprehensive package. It's through that integration that we hope that we can address some of the underlying dysfunctions of our world today that are leading towards greater inequality, that are leading towards environmental degradation, and in many parts of the world, economic stagnation. From the MDGs, we understood that while we could fix certain things in the short term, such as poverty or providing health services or water or sanitation, they did not necessarily have a longer lasting impact. And why? Because sometimes economic shocks would push us back. So if you look at the fiscal crisis, or if you just look at the economic growth in some of the countries, in the case of both Ethiopia and India, for example, more people fell into poverty than came out of poverty between 1994 and 2004. While we had the MDGs, we also had the GEGs, the GEGs. And there are upwards of 500 goals that member states have in fact agreed to over the last 20 years on climate change, biodiversity, chemicals. Now, an assessment that we did in 2011, I believe it was, by UNEP, showed that in fact we've only achieved 4% of these. So the question was why? Why is it that even on the environmental issues, which everybody understood to be important, we were only achieving this much? And it was that realization that we cannot achieve the environmental goals if we don't address the social and economic barriers to achieving them. So there was a lot of momentum built towards integration in this process. Financing for development essentially should become a financing for sustainable development. How is that to be achieved? Where do the countries position themselves? Is it going to be additional money coming in or not? These are still to be debated. But we definitely need a strong signal coming from the Addis conference that will then give the confidence not only to the heads of states who will come in September to sign off, but to the rest of us, the citizens of this world, who hopefully will start to see this as their agenda and not just something being imposed on top. I think it has to express itself in certain commitments, and the commitments have to come from all walks of life. They have to come from the donor countries in terms of meeting not only their commitments to 0.7% of the gross national income towards ODA, but it has to also come from the so-called recipient countries, in the sense that they need to provide the assurances that the post-2015 agenda is now giving them the policy coherent space for them to be using the financing that's available. The IWI, the Inclusive Wealth Index, takes the GDP and values a country's natural resources into that equation. So it's no longer just dollars, it's also the value of resources available to that country. Between 1998 and 2008, in fact, growth in the majority of countries was stagnant. And in a few countries, in fact, it was a negative growth, meaning it was a decline. So that is a very good measure, yet at the macro level, of how we are really not achieving prosperity. We might be achieving purely economic prosperity, but we certainly are not achieving anything in terms of environmental sustainability. And I can also talk about the fact that it's generating more and more inequality, both within nations and between nations. Essentially, it refers to the partnership or the handshake between those who have and those who have not, kind of thing. So the partnership around financing, the partnership around technology transfer, the partnership for assisting and giving more capacity building to countries. It's no longer a donor-recipient relationship. The paradigm absolutely has to change. So people talk about a new global partnership in that sense of broadening and understanding the universality of this agenda.